Watching News at Prime. Let's bring you this now, and it is one of our leading stories. EFF leader Julius Malema has been found guilty of hate speech by the Western Cape Equality Court. This ruling follows the remarks he made during a rally. This was in October of 2022, 2 years after the party clashed with residents at the Brackenfell High School. In his ruling, Judge Mark Scher found that Malema's statements demonstrated a clear intention to incite harm and promote hatred. He said Malema violated the Equality Act. Let's get some reaction now, and we are joined by Anton Harber, Director at the Campaign for Free Expression. Mr. Harber, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. First, let's start with your reaction to this court ruling.
Yes, well, thank you very much and good evening. Let me say that my concern is that there doesn't seem to be any consistency in the rulings of what is hate speech and what isn't. And that is what comes through. You know, Mr. Malema was found not guilty of hate speech when he sang "Kill the Boer." Then a few weeks ago, there was a finding that when he was called a cockroach, the person who did that, Kenny Kuneni, was guilty of hate speech. And now Mr. Malema is himself found guilty of hate speech for something that seems to me to be less serious than singing "Kill the Boer." So what strikes me is that we don't have a consistency. You know, there needs to be a very clear threat of hurt or harm as a result of a statement of this kind. And I think we have to look closely at whether that is the case, or whether it just isn't speech that may be ugly, that may be unpleasant, that may be inappropriate, but whether it's hate speech is another question. Because if we're not clear about what is or isn't hate speech, then it will infringe on people's right to speak strongly in the political sphere.
Yeah, I think you've put your finger on it, Anton, because the events at Brackenfell High School were very ugly. And as you say, if you equate or if you compare Dubuli Bunu, which is "Kill the Boer," this is a song that he sang, versus what he said at Brackenfell, your viewpoint is that this is less serious. Who needs to do some introspection here? The Equality Court, and if so, what do they need to do to come out clear?
I think we need, you know, we're getting different judgments from different courts. At the end, the Constitutional Court has to make it clear, and it really needs to be based on the notion that there is a real threat of violence as a result of the statement that is made. You know, it depends a great deal on the context, yes, and it will always depend on the context in which it's said. But we do have to, I think, lean over backwards to ensure that political speech is as free and as open as possible, even if it's ugly and unpleasant. But we must be clear what crosses the line into hate speech.
The EFF coming out already in a statement reacting to this, and they saying that this is an attack on the democratic space and the right to political expression. Would you support their stance, because they're saying they're going to the Supreme Court to challenge this outcome?
I think it's good they're going to challenge it, because that's the way to get clarity in the law. And certainly my instinct is to be as open as possible about political speech, as long as it's not it's not clear that it's going to result in violence based on somebody's race, for example.
Apart from the South African Human Rights Commission, which brought this complaint, there was an individual whose name is withheld, and they came out to say they felt personally threatened by Mr. Malema's words. When you have said what your viewpoint is a little earlier, what would you say to that individual who says, I felt personally threatened by Malema's words?
Well, if this person can demonstrate that they had good reason to feel personally threatened, that they would be hurt or harmed, then I think there is a case to be made. But you know, the law is based on attacks on particular groups of individuals, such as based on their race or their gender, or a group of factors like that. It can't be based on their political beliefs, for example. So it's a complex law, and it needs very clear clarification from our courts.
Anton Harber, thank you very much for your time, a director at the Campaign for Free Expression.